I want to congratulate you and We the World on the 20th anniversary of 11 days of global unity. Together, you, me, and we can create a better world and have fun doing it.
Thank you, Dr. Jane Goodell, for helping We the World and all our partners to celebrate over 20 years of 11 days of global unity. And thank you for joining us. Welcome to the 11 Days of Global Unity Summit, featuring visionary leaders and activists, profound dialogue, and bold calls to action. We are promoting the hashtag urgency for action. It's urgency, the number 4, and then action. Hashtag urgency for action. We are using that in all our activities. My name is Birgit Ben-Eli, and I'm the Director of Strategic Engagement and International Outreach for We the World. Today, I'm excited that we will be joined by Mark LeVine, Rosa Naparstek, Julie Oxenberg, and Bruce Hirsch, who will be talking about GAZA from the politics of meaning perspective for the theme Human Rights of the 11 Days of Global Unity. For the full 11-day summit schedule, you can register for free by going to 11daysofglobalunity.org. 11 is a numeral in 11daysofglobalunity.org. There you can see all the 11 Days Summit broadcasts. And at we.net, you can take action with the 11 campaigns for change, subscribe to Trans Magazine, and you can make a contribution to support all this work to going by we.net/donate. Thank you so much. Before we bring on our extraordinary speakers, I want to acknowledge some of our amazing partners we support and collaborate with during 11 Days of Global Unity and all year round. The UN International Day of Peace NGO Committee, Peace Day Philly, the Unite for Peace Coalition, which includes Unity Earth, the Sign Network, One World Rising Global Poho, the Rise as One, Hubcast Media, the Awakening World, We the World, also Climate Week, the Deep and Rapid Transformation Conversion, Pause the World for Peace in Times Square, and Pace e Bene Nonviolence Campaign. What an amazing movement representing literally millions of people working to achieve global unity, all working with We the World and the We campaign at we.net. Now let's bring in our host, Rick Ulfik. Rick Ulfik is the founder of We the World at we.net and the co-creator of 11 Days of Global Unity. Welcome to the broadcast, Rick Ulfik.
Thank you, Birgit. And thank you all so much for joining us. While it is important to consider human rights violations in conflict areas like Sudan, Gaza, Ukraine, Congo, and Myanmar, it's also true that the US policies are connected to the problems in these regions. And unfortunately, we are living in a time when in the USA, there has been an erosion of the rule of law, civil rights, and even human rights, democracy, and freedom, which is harming millions of people in the US and also around the world. To address some of these things and to specifically discuss the catastrophe in Gaza from the politics of meaning perspective, I'm excited that we will be joined by Mark LeVine, Julie Oxenberg, Rosa Naparstek, and Bruce Hirsch, members of the Foundation for Ethics and Meaning, which was established by Rabbi Michael Lerner and Mark LeVine in 1995. So that's like 30 years ago. Amazing, right? So before Rabbi Lerner passed away, which was on August 28th, 2024, at the age of 81, he was actively engaged in addressing the struggle between Israelis and Palestinians. I'd like to play a short video in which a member of the Foundation for Ethics and Meaning, Nanette Shore, gives a quick overview of the Foundation for Ethics and Meaning, FEM. So she'll refer to FEM when she's talking about that.
So I wanted to kick us off by telling you a little bit about the background of the Foundation for Ethics and Meaning and the politics of meaning ideas from which on which it's based. So FEM, the Foundation for Ethics and Meaning, is a grassroots, or was a 501c3 tax-exempt organization established by Michael Lerner, as Rick explained, who is the editor of Tikkun magazine, and also by Mark LeVine in 1995. The foundations of the FEM's activities and research sought to challenge the economic and cultural dominance of market-driven consumption and the worship of material wealth, power, and celebrity, and to challenge the apathy, the political, ethical, spiritual apathy, and the human and ecological damage that worldview produced. FEM's work was to encourage a holistic and community-based spirit of caring that promotes tolerance, justice, and reconciliation. The politics of meaning is the value system and political analysis which drove the work of FEM. A politics of meaning, which is really a term that Michael Lerner, also with Peter Gable, developed after their research, is a politics in which each human being is valued for their intrinsic worth. It focuses on creating a new bottom line, which measures the success of each sector of society, whether it's economy, government, institutions, healthcare, education, legal system, based not on whether they maximize money, profit, and power, but by the extent to which they maximize love, caring, kindness, generosity, empathy, justice, peace, and nonviolence.
Thank you, Nanette Shore. We're going to hear from Mark LeVine, Julie Oxenberg, Rosa Naparstek, and Bruce Hirsch. Starting with Mark. Mark, could you please introduce yourself, say what you've been working on regarding the Middle East, Gaza, your efforts to bring Israelis and Palestinians together through music. You and I have shared music over the years, so
over the decades.
Yes, decades. That's true. It's amazing, right? And music is such a powerful tool for bringing people together with a common
Sure.
language in that way.
Sure.
And how would you, Mark, frame possibilities for the future in terms of the politics of meaning approach? And welcome to the broadcast, Mark LeVine.
Well, thank you for having me, Rick. This is a real honor. We've been working together on this for so long, on the politics of meaning, going back to 1994, perhaps even earlier. And Palestine, Israel has been at the heart of the politics of meaning since we began this effort. Michael Lerner was obviously involved in trying to promote a different way of approaching the conflict. I would point out, he and I didn't agree, in fact, on really the ultimate nature of the conflict. He saw it as really an equal struggle between two peoples, but I saw it more as a settler-colonial struggle, which is a very different dynamic and puts most of the power in the hands of the much stronger party. And I think that's really part of what's at the root of today, of what we're seeing today. But if we're talking about a politics of meaning as wanting to replace, an ethics of selfishness and of consumption at any cost with an ethics of love and caring and taking care of the earth, what most indigenous peoples have been trying to urge us to do since, for hundreds of years, we have to realize that the violence that we're seeing in Gaza, in Sudan, in Ukraine, in Myanmar, across everywhere, really eating away at the soul of America right now, is not new. It's been there for half a millennium. If not, it's been there as long as there's been humans, but certainly it's been baked into the global system really for half a millennium, since we had a global system, since Europeans first started quote unquote exploring or coming to the Americas and then other parts of the world and then colonizing them. And as you have the modern nation state emerge with modern capitalism, they really emerge out of colonialism, out of the incredible violence, genocide, slavery, massive exploitation that all of these depended on in order to function efficiently. So the system has an incredible amount of violence baked into it. And I think what we see now with climate change, with all the violence globally, is just the feedback from the earth, finally. And we see humanity kind of breaking down because we can't look at each other with respect if we only see each other as instruments of taking care of whatever immediate material or spiritual needs we have. So that's the larger context that this is going on in. But with Gaza in particular, you're right. You know, on the one hand, this is very much a problem between Israelis and Palestinians. It's a problem that stems from a century and a half of Israeli colonization in Israel-Palestine. And I'm sitting here in Australia, another one of the world's most successful settler colonial states. And I come from the United States, perhaps the most successful settler colonial state in history, in the way it's been able to erase generally and utterly disempower the indigenous people. So on the one hand, it's a very simple narrative. On the other hand, it's a very complex narrative because what has made Israel successful in doing this is its role in a global system, is the fact that most of the violence it engages in is no different than the violence that every other major power has engaged in. Perhaps today it's the most intense, but what we've seen other powers, including the United States, the level of violence we've engaged in without any kind of sufficient reason for doing so, whether it was Vietnam, whether it's Iraq, and whether it's sponsoring the worst regimes imaginable globally. And Russia's no better, and China has its own problems, as we all know, with Uyghurs and with repression at home. So there's really no examples we can hold up, right? Even countries in Scandinavia, Norway, their wealth and their happiness comes from, again, the money drawn from petroleum and other products that are also destroying the world. So it's a systemic issue. And what is happening in Palestine, Israel cannot be separated from a larger global system that has produced this. In the same way that September 11th, the attacks of September 11th cannot be separated from this larger system that has been, at least the post-war system, if we only want to go back less than a century. So in a way, what We the World is doing, what it emerged as a response to, and I was there at the first meeting, I remember very well, and Daniel Ellsberg, God rest his soul, was speaking, and I think he was saying the same thing even then. We can't separate that event, that violence, that horrific violence, which you and I saw being in New York. We literally saw with our own eyes. We can't separate that from centuries of violence of an entire system that produced it. So what I think Gaza and the larger violence in Palestine, Israel tell us, they're just the biggest flashing light you can imagine, to tell us we need to change the way this system globally is organized before it's too late, before the feedback loop starts feeding forward and completely upsets any chance at reestablishing balance without a wholesale cleaning of the system, which will be even more violent. And, I think humans intuitively know that. We have stories going back thousands of years of floods that wash away everything, that force people to start anew. Almost every culture has something like that. So there's always been an awareness that if we get too out of whack with our surroundings, nature will take care of that. And I think that's where we are right now. And Gaza is a symptom of that. And the fact that that the Prime Minister of Germany could say, Israel is doing our dirty work for us. He was talking not just about Gaza, but about the attack on Iran, which was, of course, illegal. Putin is hitting, government buildings in Kyiv. All of these things betray an utter lack of concern for the world, for the rule of law, but they're all inevitable from the system we're living in. If you have so little concern for destroying the earth, how are you going to have concern for each other? How are you going to have respect for each other? So from a politics and meaning perspective, we need to look at, what has enabled this violence. And if you look at all the companies, the special rapporteur for the occupied territories, Francesca Albanese, put out an amazing report which wasn't news to any of us who are in the business, so to speak, but was very much, I'm sure, news to a lot of people of how many companies across the world profit from the mass violence and death right now in the occupied territories, right? It's enormous. There is a very good reason the European powers are not doing anything other than paying lip service to try to end this. They're making a lot of money. But most importantly, and I'll wind down with this, when we think about Israel doing our dirty work for us, as the German Prime Minister said, and he's not the only leader who said that. The Vice Prime Minister of Sweden said something similar. What they mean is they see, and this goes back decades. The U.S. intelligence services already in 1999 put out a document called Vision 2020, where they said essentially globalization is going to produce intensified inequality, climate change is going to produce incredible interruptions and changes that are going to move millions and millions and millions of people who have no choice but to leave their homes and try to get somewhere safer and better. And the U.S. has to not only prepare for that, but dominate that. And that's something that started, already 30, 35, 30 years ago. These ideas were being put out by the people who knew, which was intelligence agencies and security and military, whose job it was to think about what the future was going to be. And now we're living with that, with hundreds of millions of people who are forced on the move, with unprecedented numbers of refugees globally, with climate refugees and internally displaced people exploding all over the world, and people being forced to move to entirely different continents just to survive. And needless to say, Europe and the US, the global north, Australia, where I am now, they do not want these refugees. They do not want people there, but they do not want to change the system that makes those refugees inevitable. So the only thing you can do in that situation is make the cost of trying to flee so great that people will just stay in their place, even if it means living horrible lives or just dying. And so what Israel's doing, and Russia's played a good part in this with its violence in Chechnya and the Ukraine and Crimea, and other countries have also done their part. Each one keeps ramping the violence up, lowering the bar for acceptability, so that the entire international order, where at least there was lip service to human rights and international law, is gone. And once it's gone, that means the North, the wealthy countries, can do whatever they deem necessary to prevent the massive hordes of darker skinned people from coming to their shores. And that's really ultimately why people are not just tolerating what Israel's doing, but are in fact not at all unhappy with what Israel doing, because as the president of Colombia pointed out, this Gaza is an example. It's an example for the world. If you try to leave, if you try to come to us, if you try to oppose this system, we will just murder you en masse. So better try to, live the best you can in the circumstances you find yourself. And that's really the situation that we're in now. And that's why it's so important from the standpoint of global unity, not just to oppose what Israel's doing, but to oppose the system and to realize the system is so broad. And it's a system that has taken decades and even centuries to get to this point. And therefore, we need to, as the people of the world, we need to come together and say, no more. And if we can do that, maybe we can begin to stop this violence and begin a process of healing. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mark. Next, we're going to hear from Julie Oxenberg. Could you please introduce yourself and say what you've been working on and your thoughts regarding the Middle East and Gaza? And remember, this is kind of a broad discussion that we're having. Not everybody on this panel will have the same ideas and opinions about everything. So, and that's part of why we are doing these kinds of forums and these panels. I just encourage everybody to really share where you're coming from. Every one of these opinions is valid, and they may be different. So I just want to mention that. So what are your thoughts regarding the Middle East and Gaza, and how would you frame possibilities for the future in terms of the politics of meaning approach? And welcome to the broadcast, Julie Oxenberg.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm so grateful that you're doing this and for all the years you've been doing this. And you know, I don't know if we've never needed it more than now, but certainly it can feel that way. I am a psychologist, a clinical psychologist, and I also have a degree in international relations, and I've done various writing and projects that integrate the two, and that was the source of my interest in Tikkun and the politics of meaning, and Michael Lerner's work. And I have to say, you know, it's I mean, it goes without saying, it's just unbelievably devastating what we're watching on so many levels. And I agreed with a lot of what Mark said. Clearly, we're at a point where you know, where we have to fundamentally evolve the systems and structures that we're living within, in order for to really salvage our lives and our species and many other species' lives on this planet. And it has to be done in, you know, relatively not that long a time period. And all kinds of things are heating up, literally and figuratively, in the context of the breakdown of this era, this modernist, materialist era, capitalist era, and the urgent need to move to something that centers more. And this is what I think a politics of meaning has been about: the absolute recognition that we are, that human beings are meaning driven species, and that the you know, the thing that really has the greatest power ultimately in on many levels, and certainly toward creating and sustaining and surviving and thriving in this world, the domain, the dimension that has the greatest power is really the dimension of spirit and emotion, the non-material domain. And we've been living in this, you know, era of tremendous materialism, and just, you know, believing that the only thing that's real is that which we can see and measure with our sense organs, and all of that. And as it relates now to Israel and Palestine, you know, one of the things that really drew me to Michael's work was his articulation of Judaism, his profoundly deep understanding of Judaism, the radical, what he called the radical message of Judaism, which is actually very much in alignment with some of, you know, with what has just been said, that he saw, you know, and by extension, then, you know, Christianity and Islam as well. And it tells a story about, you know, the ability to come out of slavery, and that slaves were able to, you know, be led out of slavery, and you know, defeated in one sense the, you know, the power of empire, the whole Egyptian empire, and then live, and then, you know, being given a way to live that honors the you know, that dimension of spirit and soul, and the recognition that there is in this, you know, in this theology, there's one God, and that we are all a product of that one God, and we are all part of, we are all sacred and equally sacred, you know, people that are, you know, made in the image, if you want to talk in these terms, of that one God. And and, given a way to live that is about, evolving our consciousness really toward recognizing the holy in everything that we do and in every aspect of the day, and not just to live in a way that is just about the material, circumstances, um, and and yeah, and Michael talked about the Jewish message as being that of the possibility of possibility, that he defined God as the force in the universe, that a force for healing and transformation that allows us to transform, go from where we are to where we could and should be, and that we can appeal to this force for that, toward that effort, and that, but that it also requires, both within the religion and within ourselves. He talked about the two primary sets of voices in the religion, and that extends, I think, to Christianity and Islam as well. A set of voices that he defined as the more fundamental voice of God, that really speaking to the oneness of creation, the sacredness of all beings, the inclination, the telling us to live in a stance of love for one another, for God, with all our hearts and mights and souls. To love our neighbors as ourselves, all of that, and to seek justice and to pursue justice and to be part of the healing and transformation of our world. And then the other kind of set of voices that are also in there, however, are those that do talk about, seeking security and strength through domination and through things that are related more to material strength and military strength, and zero-sum games and vengeance and all kinds of things that are also there to be read and heard in the Bible. And he felt like the process with Israel, meaning wrestling with God, the process is meant to be one of wrestling with these different aspects in the Bible, in the texts, and in our own psyches. And in that process of wrestling, to come to recognize what's the fundamental stance that can bring us to liberation and to peace and justice and love, the things that we need on this planet, and what is, and to really make that discernment. And he felt that those other voices were also the product of pain and trauma, that the people who heard them, they were reflective of the pain and trauma that of those people and how they were interpreting things, and that pain and trauma needed to be addressed, but that it could be addressed and healed and transformed. And anyway, I think that when we look at Israel and Palestine, Michael always stressed that Israel is not a Jewish state. It's a state that happens to have a lot of Jewish people in it, but it's by no means, living up to in many, almost many ways, the core messages and vision of Judaism, and that I think we have to come back to this kind of insight, this kind of really re-articulation, and some of the practices that can help us to do this. I'm a psychologist, and there are psychological practices that we can do in groups and beyond, to work on the different traumas that we've caused one another, historical traumas, communal traumas, to help us to be able to actually embody this, and in order to move forward. And I think that thus far, I think that I don't know, thus far, the efforts to make peace have been either like with the Oslo process, it stayed just on the surface and talking about borders and boundaries. And aside from the, the context in which this all happened, I think that we need to really bring in a much more integrative process in whatever way this is going to be able to go forward. And one that brings these kind of vision spiritually, that brings in psychological healing, and that also has political demand, and that works together in those ways. And I don't yet see a lot of that integrative approach happening. I am involved in one project that is working with healers, peace builders still in Israel, within 48 Israel, however you want to call it. They're still bringing Arabs and Jews together in Israel and doing some of these processes, and we're providing support for the facilitators of that. And I think that's incredibly valuable and important. I do think that it needs to get connected more to political, vision and kind of project and demand. It's not so easy, to say the least, at this time. And I'm also involved in just kind of standard activism, really, with Beit Tikkun and the kind of just, call your senators, do this and do that, which is really important. But I think in and of itself, it also kind of lacks some of the integrative approach. And maybe I will just stop there. Thank you so much. Gave you a flavor.
Yeah, thank you, Julie, so much. Let's now hear from Rosa Naparstek. Rosa, could you please introduce yourself, say what you've been working on, talk about your art, and maybe we'll see an example of your art and how that relates to the discussion and the politics of meaning and all of that, and your thoughts regarding the Middle East and Gaza. How would you frame possibilities for the future in terms of the politics of meaning approach? And welcome to the broadcast, Rosa Naparstek.
Thank you. Yay. Thank you. Hi, everyone. After listening to Mark first, I started to cry. There's nothing, not that there's nothing, but so much of what he spoke about, I am steeped in, I know, I already know, and hear it again once summarized just brings me to tears. And the most scariest part was his word systemic. It is systemic, but there's another thing that is equally systemic, and I think more primal, primordial, and it sort of touches on what Julie was talking about, is us as human beings. What is it in us that creates all this? So I'll share a little bit about myself and how this has become a major question for me. I was born during World War II. I'm a child of survivors. And the issue of cruelty, why are human beings cruel? Where does it come from? How can they be capable of such things? Even before I really understood what such things were as a child. However, it became the animating focus of my life. I became very involved in politics, equal justice, social justice movements, etc. Was active in college, and then became a lawyer in furtherance of my commitment to social change. I quickly realized that that wasn't going to take us too far. That and a life-threatening illness actually opened me up to the realization that without a profound change in our thinking and even in our being, not much will happen. In addition to helping me reframe that and experience that, also my experience in political movements with the best intentions, with the highest ideals, I saw among us the way we would treat each other, not really up to what our image of who we are was. So with that, and with that change, I opened up to my artistic abilities, which I didn't know existed, but the question still existed and formed my quest in art. What makes us capable of cruelty? And I began to feel and work with childhood experiences and memories and how our inner landscapes, our personal inner landscapes, form our political and collective world that we create from our earlier experiences. And I have come to believe that the primary cause of quote unquote cruelty is our ability as human beings, our ability to deny our own fear, pain, and vulnerability. I can never say that word. We do everything to avoid those things. And of course, the classic, which we all know about, is project. We project our shadow, and then we go off to killing the shadow, as opposed to working what lives within us. And I've come to believe that without this, without that systemic exploration and transformation, there's not much to hope for. We either evolve or die. And what attracted me to FEM, Michael Lerner, and Peter Gable, who was part of creating FEM, was their understanding. And Michael also was a psychologist, understanding the psychological and psychospiritual needs of us as human beings. And psychology, it's been said that this century, we used to see through a glass darkly, but with psychology, we had a shot in the dark as coming to know ourselves. Now that most of us are in therapy, that has become common knowledge, we can band around all these words. Obviously, not much progress has been made because change yourself to change the world, which are words by Gandhi and also Grace and Jimmy Boggs from Detroit, political activists. I don't think much is going to happen. So where does that leave me? Peter Gable, one of his favorite things that he often quoted was from a song by Van Morrison. The song was, "If I knew or trusted, or if I knew that love existed." And the words from that song that he quoted is, I have to look at my notes here. "If my heart could do my thinking and my head begin to feel, I would look upon the world anew and know what's truly real." So when I describe my artwork or what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to integrate knowing and feeling into being and the personal political. And my art form is actually mixed media. I work with found objects of any kind to create often mixed metaphors because I find objects from different cultures, different periods, to create mixed metaphors that challenge our most cherished paradigms and templates of who we are, that fundamentally prevent us from being loving human beings. So I better get to my art piece or we're not going to have enough time. It's a poster, and this is not a medium I usually work with, so we're going to share my screen. I'm going to disappear, but I'll have the poster. Now, the poster relates to Gaza, Israel, Palestine, and it came out almost a year ago. And at that time, I still had a little bit of optimism. No, optimism is the right word, hope. Now it's a different story, and I'll share that later. But now let's go to my poster. It's entanglement. Entanglement was a word used and is used in quantum physics. And entangled means aspects of one particle of an entangled pair depend upon aspects of the other particle, no matter how far apart they are or what lies between them. Actually, reading this, I'm beginning to cry. I cry easily, but by the way, it took me a long time in my life to learn how to cry. So why is that relevant here? We're talking about Israel and Palestine, this land. No matter how far apart we are, we're entangled with one another. So here you see the I, thou, Buber's I, thou. And I guess that speaks for itself. And this land is my land. This land is your land. This land was meant for you and me. So how will that happen? When we are at each other's throats. I have 3 poems on this poster. The first one, and I'm kind of embarrassed to even have it next to the other 2, which is by Rumi and Yehuda Amichai, but it was what first came up for me when things were happening. My mind is split screen with images of waving flags and body bags. My brain bifurcated with arguments of who to blame, and my heart, the one with the left and right, is one. And this is the answer to the question I ask with my whole body when I hear we stand united. United for what? And I will now go to the poem by Rumi and the poem by Yehuda Amichai. My poem, or rather my words, speak to a plane of reality where we are at each other's throats, where we're bifurcated. And can we get there from here? And I don't think we can. I really don't think we can. At the same time that we have to deal with all the realities that Mark spoke about, we have to go to or recognize there is another land. This is by Rumi. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. And then Yehuda Amichai, a very beloved Israeli poet, the place where we are right. From the place where we are right, flowers will never grow in the spring. The place where we are right is hard and trampled like a yard. But doubts and love digs up the world like a mole a plow. And a whisper will be heard in the place where the ruined house once stood. Well, what that means for me is we will have to go to a place in ourselves that lies beyond the split, that starts integrating our knowing and feeling, our being, our humanity. We have to go to the systemic fault that has made, quote unquote, the good and evil that plays itself out in the world. So what is my hope for Gaza? What is my hope for now? What do I do? In my art, I deal a lot with cruelty. But nothing cruel. It's just childhood memories that affect us, that pain us, and how we, by paying attention, can heal, and how healing is important. The major thing, this is so important, the whole question of cruelty for me, which arose from the Holocaust, with the whole thing, with the whole insanity happening in Gaza. That cruelty, the cruelty of the Holocaust being used as a reason to create another Holocaust in Palestine, basically drives me nuts. It is unbearable to see this happening. And the insanity which Israel is displaying comes from a lot of their unhealed trauma, not working with the inner pain of what happened and why and how, only to repeat it. So that's something that I'd like to point out. I work with I live in Manhattan, and I live with Uptown for Palestine. work with a group of a fairly large group of young people, old people, and radicals from the 60s who spent time in jail during the Vietnam War. And we organize demonstrations, vigils up here. I'm involved in 2 small vigils on a regular basis, on a Monday and Tuesday, regularly at the supermarket, and one regularly at our assemblyman, Adriano Espliat, who is bought by APAC. When we began this, almost after October, we barely had anybody taking our flyers. We were ignored. But now, after almost a year or more, we can pass out about 150 flyers in an hour. And people are receptive, not everybody, but they'll take it. The other thing I'm involved with with the group is doing art exhibits or raising money for families in Gaza. But that's a drop.
Okay.
That's a drop in the bucket, but we have to do our drop in the bucket. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Rosa. So you can stop
Stop sharing.
the sharing, right? Exactly.
Stop sharing.
Yeah.
I actually like sharing.
But continue caring. How about
Yeah,
that?
right. There we go. Stop sharing, continue caring. Thank you.
And thank you, Rosa. And let's hear now from Bruce Hirsch. Could you please introduce yourself, say what you've been working on, your thoughts regarding the Middle East and Gaza, and how you would frame possibilities for the future in terms of the politics of meaning approach. Welcome to the broadcast, Bruce Hirsch.
Thank you so much. You know, all of us use everything that we have to try to understand the inconceivable of the current moment. My profession is medicine. I'm an infectious disease specialist. I'm attuned to the interplay of our bodies and the microbial world. And I look at Gaza and I see the hospitals that have been transformed to rubble. I look at Gaza and I see human bodies dead, rotting, human bodies displaced, deprived. There are epidemics of diseases, of respiratory disease, of diarrheal illness. There are high rates right now of scabies, lice, chickenpox, hepatitis A, and even evidence of poliovirus. Everything made worse by crowding, by loss of sanitation, by malnutrition. I look at Gaza and I see an epidemic of objectification and othering. There is a peculiar partnership that's taking place of violence answering violence, these vicious cycles of increasing anger and vengeance. The moral injury of the current moment calls for us to reach deeply into the best of our values and into the depths of our traditions. Jews, Christian, Muslims, we are all peoples of the book. Our origin story is that we're all children of Adam. Adam, that primordial human being who is of the earth and also is created by divine inspiration. Our origin story is that we're all family. We're all related to each other. We are children of Abraham, Ishmael and Isaac, Ismael and Yitzhak, are brothers. We are all human beings. The challenge of the current moment is to recognize mutual humanity, is to heal from the disease of indifference. The suffering in Gaza is infectious. There's an epidemic of moral cruelty and blindness. The historic consequence of the present moment threatens Israel's collective security. It threatens all of us. What's happening in Gaza is going to be spreading and happening all over. We understand that viruses circle around the world. We understand that there are epidemics and that each of us, our well-being is connected with the well-being of other people. And we know the natural history of infectious disease. The infection can be overwhelming unless there's treatment. The infection can be life-threatening unless there's an intrinsic human immune response to be able to deal and to be able to soothe the ravaged body, which can eventually be nursed back to health. Our well-being is intimately related to the well-being of each and every person on this planet. When we honor each other, we heal, we flourish. When we demand peace and dignity, we affirm our own healthy humanity. When we care for the downtrodden, we respect the transcendent meaning of a worthy politics, recognizing the intrinsic worth of each and every person. Really want to thank you, Rick. Really want to thank you, Birgit, for this opportunity.
Well, thank you, Bruce, and thank everybody for speaking. And maybe we can spotlight everybody now, so we can have a quick roundtable. Does anyone want to respond to what anyone has said? And especially, can we have a call to action and maybe limit it to like just a few minutes, 3 minutes? We've been promoting this hashtag urgency for action, which is urgent, the word urgency, the number 4, and then the word action. So it's hashtag urgency for action. We're using that in all of the 11 days and other activities that we're doing. So what are you calling for? How would you like people to take action? So let's start with Mark.
Well, thank you. And thank you, everyone, for such amazing words. I've known you all a long time, and to still constantly be learning from you just shows how valuable I think the efforts of the Foundation for Ethics and Meaning and We the World that has come out of that, and Tikkun Magazine for all the years it was operating remain. For me, there's two things that have to happen at the same time. First, we need to resist with the same energy that the people who want to destroy this planet are using to do so. There's an incredible imbalance in energy. The amount of energy and joy people are getting in destroying everything that's been built is so much more than the really pathetic energy of especially those of us like us on this call who have the privilege of not being very poor, of not being living in societies that are even more violent and more repressive. So I think there needs to be a lot more resistance and people willing to lose things that they hold dear before we stand a chance. But at the same time, there needs to be a vision of what a different world would look like. I spent a lot of years working in Chiapas with the Zapatista movement, and they always talk about un otro world es posible, another world is possible. And that's really, if you can't imagine that other world, you're not going to risk anything to get there. So I think what you're doing is crucial, and global unity is crucial. But we need to understand that not only is it necessary, it's actually possible that this system and the future that seems to be heading to us is not the only one. And that if we're willing to take the risk and push with the same effort that those who want to create this dystopian world are pushing, we might actually get somewhere. So I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And Julie, would you like to, do you have a call to action? And if you want to react to anything,
I definitely agree around the need for vision. That, it seems like I've heard, especially since Oslo failed, and these last 20 years or whatever, just a lot of people in Israel, I don't know, have seemed like, they're not articulating a vision, and they're not really they don't have that much faith and this and that. And then since October 7th, people that I speak to in Israel, oh, it's even more that they don't, how could they, come up with a vision now? You can't talk about. And at the same time, it seems like there's a group that always is right out there with their vision. And that's like these far right people who are, let's, get rid of what's annex and expel and this and this. And I think that we need to really work with whatever it is inside ourselves that are holding us back from not articulating a vision, ourselves, and articulating what it is we want and what could be. I mean, it is true that the choices are so like, what could be is so potentially really so wonderful. That's what's one of the biggest tragedies of all, with Israel and Palestine. I mean, two peoples who have so much to offer one another, I think. And then the alternatives are just so dystopian. I don't think that Israel is going to get security through more and more of this horror and the whole world hating it and it having to go to Fortress Israel and none of it. So I do think like really taking on that task of vision and what is getting in our way. If we can't get there, what's getting in our way, like really doing processes to open that up and do the grieving or whatever, that is incredibly important. It's not only resisting, but coming up with a vision. Thank you.
Okay, and would you have something that particular people or anybody watching this, how could they take action?
Well, I mean, I don't have like a quick thing to say right now. I mean, I think that maybe we can think about groups that could start to like, talk about write about this. So start writing about what you would hope for, what you think would be possible. Start to, putting that out there, meeting with one another, like, and really like taking that on in various ways and help to create that.
Okay, thank you, Julie. And Rosa.
Yes. One of the things that keeps coming up is you can't do anything. You're just one person or whatever. And the hopelessness and just everybody being, well, what can I do? The point is, we can do a lot. Each one of us can do a lot, certainly in concert, and to challenge the idea, what can one person do? So for me, it's to let people know that they can do something and they should do something. And the first thing to make it easy is there's tons of organizations out there. Find one that you're called to. What are the things that move you? Where do you want to participate? Bring your gifts to what needs to be done. And in terms of Gaza and Israel, it's interesting. There's two organizations. One is called Combatants for Peace, and the other one is Standing Together. And they work with Palestinians and Israelis, and they have an enormous following, and they come to the United States, and they also recruit, support them. We can do financial support counts, and all the different organizations that are trying to bring medical relief to the children in Gaza. Money does get through. So, and you can join vigils and demonstrations or start them. A friend of mine in Detroit started a poetry reading event. She would stand on the corner with some people reading poetry, Palestinian poetry. Some people were shocked that Palestinians would even write poetry, that they're literate. So now that has grown to a really big event, 20 to 30 people in the local park, people who would have never attended anything else. There's so many ways if you just really decide you want to do something. Do it.
Just do it. Thank you, Rosa. And Bruce.
I think a lot of people are doing a lot of things already. And I think we need to claim it. And we need to claim it with joy. I think the idea that this is fun, that this is a privilege, that this is there's an exuberance that we need to be part of. This is a part of our own personal flourishing. There are two organizations that I like, and one is called Give Directly, and your money goes to an impoverished family and to make a difference on a regular difference. And there's something that's joyful about it, that is uplifting. We're working together across the world. We're connected not only by our viruses, our expired CO2, the molecules that we spread in and out of our body, but also by these different types of actions. And the other organization that I recently I got a kick out of, and it was this group called Physicians for Human Rights Israel. And it's a bunch of schleppy Israeli doctors. And the way they talk about caring for Palestinians in their clinic, they were suffused with joy and gratitude. And I just want to kind of point out that there is that we gain so much from giving. That this is a partnership, that we enter into relationship, and many of us are doing wonderful acts of kindness and action and consciousness raising right now. Let's claim it and take credit for it and take love out of it.
Thank you, Bruce. That's wonderful. And Birgit, you've been listening to all of what the speakers have been saying, and I'd love to hear any reactions that you have, and then if you have a call to action as well.
I have plenty, and obviously it's very difficult to respond to all. As you all mentioned, and that goes beyond the Middle East conflict, that we live in a time of division, hostility, and violence. And I feel like, and we all know that the complexity is very often or easily stripped away. And so you all mentioned very important points, among others, that we do need to move forward with the process. As Julie said, has to be an integrative process. I love, Rosa, I love the quote you brought in from Van Morrison: if my heart could do my thinking and my head begin to feel, I would look upon the world and you will know what's truly real. So I do have a lot of thoughts, but I thought, since we anyhow have to end here at some point, I keep it more general. And I think one thing we do is we must stop to dehumanize others and mirroring the very hostility we condemn or oppose. I think it's important to that we stop erasing space for being nuanced, not seeing complexity, and shared humanity. And I think it's very important to invite to dialogue, care for everyone, recognize moral clarity, again hold space for trauma, as Julie mentioned it. I think Jewish and Palestinian trauma and humanity. Because I think if we don't see the situation without that, we are missing really the heart of the problem. And in general, I think we should choose dialogue over hostility, choose coming ground over division, and trust over suspicion. And I must say, if I think about trust just in my own world, it's so interesting how, I even sense that partly how I get the sense that, it's not even fear. It's like some trust, that I suddenly question trust, and because of the situation we live in. And I think we all have to overcome that. And I think what's important for all of us is that we, choose curiosity over fear, and compassion over contempt, and courage over silence. That's, I think, is very important, that we all speak up, because many of us don't. We only hear the loud voices, and those are often the extremes. And I think creativity should, as Rosa mentioned, creativity should replace destruction. So again, I think I said this once before in a different context. My call to action is simple. We have to build bridges. We have to be the voice of hope, and we have to be the hands that heal. Thank you so much. We can create this all together because we all share one humanity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Birgit, and thank everyone. And here's my call to action. It's called the We Power campaign. It's all about the power of we. And I'm talking about millions of us coming together to transform our society so it prioritizes the common good. To help us launch the We Power campaign, you can go to we.net/We Power campaign. Very simple. we.net/We Power campaign. So this has been an amazing and inspiring discussion. Thank you, Mark LeVine, Julie Oxenberg, Rosa Naparstek, Bruce Hirsch, and Birgit Ben-Eli. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rick, and everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Be well.
Thank you. And thank all of you for watching this and for being part of 11 days of global unity. To get involved, please go to we.net. It's all about we, right? And this is a W. So let's go from a me society, which is, like an M. Let's go from a me society to a we society. And that's why we launched we.net. So together we can create a world that works for all. Thank you. And thank you all so much.
Thank you all so much.